We are live once again. Hello, we're live once again today. All right, this is day 7 of the 60-day Bible challenge. All right, so welcome, guys. Welcome to today's challenge. All right, so today we're not going to, take much time just to put out some facts there out there for you to go and do your own research and gain the knowledge that you need to gain. All right, today we're talking about the purported generations of Adam, the purported generations of Adam. All right, so the whole world, was fooled by the Romans, those who put together and spread it all around the world, that humanity originated from one man, Adam, and then one woman, Eve. But the word Adam and Eve, they are not the name of anybody or any person. All right, you can Google that, you can check that out. So the word Adam is not the name of a person. And so there is no name. So the purported first man, woman, they have no names. All right, no name at all. So how did they now get the generations, of nameless people? All right. So like I said before, and the other previous videos that I did, the truth remains that this is a tribal affair. All right. This is a Jewish affair. The Jewish people sat down, and some of them, their writers, sat down and wrote their own history. All right. They wrote their own history, they wrote their own story and created, ancestors for themselves, just like pretty much, some other tribes, did. And that may include your own tribe. They created their own, ancestors. So these stories are cooked up stories to create an ancestral lineage. Common sense tells you that nobody knows the first man or the first woman of any tribe. And common sense tells you that we are not from the same ancestors. The old world didn't come out from one particular man or one particular woman. In fact, the whole of the world, generations gone by, scientific evidences and scientific research shows that all of the people, in the world did not, come from the same, place and all that. Every of these tribes, archaeological evidences shows that every of these tribes have their own different origins. They have their different ancestors. And the world was divided in a way that, it was difficult for people to know that some other persons were on the other side of the world. Not until, science and technology, started, the primitive age of man, that people began to build boats and build, um, machinery and all that, build boats to row across the seas and the lakes and the oceans and all that, and discovered other human beings that were on the other side of the world. All right, because the world, the lands were divided by rivers, by streams, by seas and all that. So until men were able to develop ability to build boats and cross the oceans and rivers, they never knew that some other persons were on the other side of the world and all that. All right. So most of these tribes built primitive stories around their own tribes. And that is not different from what the Jewish people did. Hebrew people, the Jewish people, the Hebrew people later became the Jewish people and all that. And then the Gentiles, their own brothers, those they call Gentiles. That story is going to come up as we progress in this 60-day Bible challenge. So welcome once again. So let's dive into the Bible to see the purported generations of Adam. All right. Let's go into the Bible. We're going to read Genesis chapter 5. All right. So what does this say? He says, this is the book of Adam's generations. Now, this book that is in the Bible as the book of Adam's generations, there is a book where this account was copied from into the Bible. All right. So it's not an original. It was copied from a particular book that contains, generations that were created by certain persons and by unknown authors. So they copied this generation or whatever generations from the book of the generations of Adam and all that. And like I said before, Adam is not the name of anybody, it's not the name of a person. Okay, the word Adam has to do with, gotten from earth, as talking about man, talking about humanity, talking about human and all that. So it's actually a word for human and all that. And Eve, mother of the earth, kind of thing. So there is no particular name for these people purported to be the ancestors of humankind. And the funny thing is, these people, these first man and woman and all that, it's purported by the Jews to have originated from their own tribe. You see that? So it was generalized, it was universalized by those who put this story together to mean the ancestors of the whole world. These people took it as the ancestor of their own tribe, of their own people, all right, of their own people. But it was later universalized as the world grew and all that. So these stories were tinkered with, were changed to sell a particular narrative. If not, how can the ancestors of the whole world, come from a particular tribe and the tribe in the Middle East? So it means the whole world we originated from the Jewish people because these people they're talking about Adam, Eve, and all that. You see the generation, they try to link the purported first man to Noah, all right, then from Noah to other people, and then to their own ancestors, David and all that. So how are we related to David? Me, an African from Nigeria, from Isoko in Delta State. How am I related to David? How am I connected to David in any way? You see that? So these whole stories, they were created to sell a particular narrative. These stories have been touched over and over and over and over. So if we read it, he says, this is the book of Adam's generations. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. See, reiterating the story in Genesis 1 and 2 of the creation. In the likeness of God made him. So this story, this is a re-narration kind of, and adding more details, to the story. So it's not something that was inspired by any God or anything. These are stories that were written, when men started writing. And like I've always said, these stories were written between the 6th and 7th century BCE. So it says, in the likeness of God made he him, male and female created he them and blessed them and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. So you see that they were called Adam. How, man, like they were called man. But there's no specific name that okay, this is James or this is John or this is that. And if you see the ancestors, okay, the children that came out from the purported ancestors of the whole world, they are Jewish names, they have Jewish names. How can the ancestors of the whole world, you know, uh, their children have Jewish names and all that? So who named them? Who gave them those Jewish names? Why not give them some kind of universal names and all that? So you see that these stories are cooked up stories. Now, if we read further, it says, and Adam lived 130 years. Who was there? Who recorded it? How did they know that the purported, first man lived, up to that number of years, 130 years, and lived 130 years before giving birth, and he begat a son in his likeness. So he had been giving birth to other sons, but none in his likeness. And what was the likeness that has been talked about after his image? What's the likeness that has been talked about? You see that he was giving birth to black, he was black, and then he was giving birth to fair children, and then later started giving birth to black children, or what was the image or the likeness? All right, that's a question for you to answer. So and then the days of Adam after I had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Adam that he lived were 930 years, and he died. And Seth lived 105 years and begat Enosh. And Seth lived after I had begotten Enosh 807 years and begat sons and daughters. Who were these sons and daughters? What are their names? And all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. And Enos lived 900, lived 90 years and begat Canaan. And Enos lived after he begat Canaan 815 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enos were 905 years, and he died. So it went on and on till it got to, Jared, Enoch. We talk about Methuselah. Talk about, other people, Lamech, and all that, and on and on and on to Shem, Ham, and Japheth. We're going to talk about tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the story of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and how people have come to believe that the generations of the world came from Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So we're going to talk about Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth tomorrow. It's going to be getting interesting. So looking at all of these generations and all that, all these people that are mentioned in this generation, if you go on and you just read and read and read, but the truth remains that these people never existed. There is no record anywhere that these people ever existed. These are cooked up names, okay, tribal names, you know, to give some level of relevance to this tribe. The Jewish people, they give some relevance to their own tribe. All right. So these are created names, they created their own story. And that is why it is important for Africans to wake up, especially not just Africans, other places, wherever you're watching from Australia, from Canada, from Britain, from India, from Bangladesh, and all that. It is important that people begin, to create their own stories, because whoever creates your story owns the narrative and also owns your history. So these people created this story, and somehow, when the Romans conquered them, took these stories, recreated them, and used them to conquer the world. And today, many people are under bondage because of these stories, because their own stories were removed and replaced with this story, that they are products of, Adam, the purported first man. All right. So you look at the generations and all that, these names, where did they get these names? These are Jewish names. All right. These are Jewish names. All of them. These are Jewish names. That's to tell you that this is cooked up Jewish ancestry. All right. They cooked it up. They had to make it up. Like I've always been saying during this broadcast, that these stories were written between the 6th and 7th century, BCE. And these stories were written from stories that were already circulating, that were circulating within the area where the stories were written. So they took from stories, story after story, and all that, myths and legends, because people didn't know anything about how the world came to be, what happened, and all that. So they had to create some myths and legends, to give themselves some relevance, to give themselves something to hold on to. Because virtually it was like there was nothing to hold on to. So people had to create stories, people had to create all of these things. All right. So these stories were created by primitive people. And today, the funny thing is, people still believe it. Hook, line, and sinker. The other day, somebody was insulting me and say all kind of trash, because of this broadcast, because I made some statements, about the fact that these stories they are not true stories, and the person believes these stories to be true. And he is not alone. There are billions of people who believe these stories to be true, and these stories to present them, that their own tribes are linked to this story. How can your tribe be linked to this story? My tribe were not linked to this story. Abraham is whatever, they're not my ancestors. I don't know who is Adam. Adam is not even a real person. Adam never existed anywhere. There's nobody called Adam and nobody called Eve. Okay. So even no tribe, I challenge you, no tribe knows the first man or woman to have, to beget their own tribe. Okay. If anybody can bring out any records, authentic records and all that, of the people that begat the first people in his own tribe, I will give you $10 million. Okay. I'll give you $10 million. Nothing like that. Nobody knows the first man or woman, to have come out of their own tribe and how they evolved. These stories are just hearsay, that were transmitted from one generation to another until they were written down and they became stories, all right, of a particular tribe. So the stories in the Bible, they are specifically, for instance, these generations of Adam and all that, they're specifically for the Jews. The Jews created their own story. They made it all up. Not just the Jews alone, other tribes made up their own stories. All right? Because you cannot know beyond when you became conscious. All right? You cannot know beyond when you started learning and all that. Since the day you were born as a person, there are people that you've had encounter with as a baby. You cannot know them, you cannot remember them, because there was a level to which you grew to, that you began to recognize people, that you began to hear people's voices and know who and who is this and all that, and begin to know. When you were in the womb, the people that were around your mother, people that were around you and all that, you don't know them. You were born, and when you gain consciousness, you began to know people and all that. And there is no way you tell me that these people who wrote these stories had any encounters with these people or knew anything about these things. They just created their own ancestry. Okay, it was a norm in those days. It was a norm to create your own ancestral stories and keep records. It was something that was there, that was created. All right. So the Jews were no exception to doing it. Other tribes did it, the Persians, the Babylonians, and all that. All these tribes, they had their own stories. Okay. Like my microphone. Wow, it's like my microphone has been off. For Facebook, I think the microphone was off, so the audio was not there. Okay, so sorry about that for those who are watching on Facebook. So the truth remains that I think I will share this video to Facebook so that those who couldn't get the audio will get it through the video on YouTube. So to end it up all for today, the truth is the generations of Adam that are written in the Bible, they are not, true. They were created. Most of these names were created, according to how the authors, those who wrote the stories, felt like, like for instance, Seth is, they create a story like Adam had no child after his likeness, after Cain killed Abel. All right. So they now have to create a story around it, create another child that was like, Adam and all that. They want to distinguish between good and bad people. All right. They all originated from Adam. So good people originated from him, bad people originated from him. You can see all these stories as you go on in the Bible to see all that transpired in the nation of Israel according to the Bible. All right. So all of this is to prick your mind, to open your mind, to begin to study for yourself and know that you did not originate from any Adam anywhere or any Eve anywhere. You are special. Your own tribe originated from its own self, okay, not from any other, tribe and all that. So you need to go and find out about your own ancestry, find out about your own tribe, find out about how you originated, and learn from wherever this history starts. Learn from it. Learn your own history. Write your own history. Write your own story, because those who write your story for you, they are the ones that own you. If you don't know, they own you, like the British still own a large part of Africa. All right. Howbeit not directly, because they were able to change our story, they were able to change our narrative and gave us another story. Today, Africa is still struggling because we've not found our identity. We are not related to any Adam or any Seth. We have nothing to do with this story. We are Africans. We have our own ancestry. Go and trace your own ancestry and know where you're from and write your own story and your own history. So these generations of Adam, they are cooked up generations. They have nothing to do with you and me. And even the Jewish people, they know that these stories are not true. Most of them know these stories are not true. And these stories do not represent a true state of reality. I thank you for watching today. See you tomorrow.